Welcome back. Our previous lesson was on shift in the supply curve. Today we'll be looking at shift in the supply curve versus movement along the supply curve. So in the market, a lot of factors can change that can affect your quantity supplied. If the only change in the market is the price of a good, then it's called a movement along the supply curve. But when other factors change in the market, apart from the price of the good that is being sold, then it's a shift in the supply curve. Now let's first consider movement along the supply curve. We have the price of apples and the quantity supplied of apples. We notice that as price moves from 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 and 5, quantity supplied also increases from 100 apples to 200, 300, 400, and 500 apples. Now, if you want to use this information to draw a supply curve, point A shows that as price is 1, quantity supplied is 100 apples. Point B shows when price increases to 2, quantity supplied increases to 200 apples. Point C shows as price increased to 3, quantity supplied increased to 300 apples. Point D shows as price increased to 4, quantity supplied increased to 400 apples. And point E shows as price increased to 5, quantity supplied increased to 500 apples. This is what we mean by movement along the supply curve. It represents the fact that as price increases, quantity supplied increases, which is represented by a movement along this same supply curve from point A to B to C to D and to E. You notice that the supply curve itself hasn't shifted, but the changes in price induces a movement along the same curve. Now let's look at what we mean by a shift in the supply curve. Let's consider a simple example where we have an old quantity supplied and a new quantity supplied. When price is 1, the old quantity supplied is 100. Assuming that something changes in the market that increases the supply of this good, it's going to move the quantity supplied from 100 to 200. When price increases to 2, the old quantity supply is 200. When price increases to 3, the old quantity supply is 300. When price increases to 4, old quantity supplied is 400. And when price increases to 5, old quantity supplied is 500. Now, as we said previously, if anything in the market apart from the price of a good changes, this is going to shift the supply curve to the left or to the right. In this example, we are considering an increase in supply. So, assuming that a market factor changes, that increases the supply of this good from 100 at price 1 to 200, from 200 at price 2 to 300, from 300 at price 3 to 400, from 400 at price 4 to 500, and from 500 at price 5 to 600. This information can be represented on this curve. So our old supply curve represents our old quantity supplied. Point A here shows that at price equals 1, quantity supplied is 100. Point B shows a price equals 2, quantity supplied is 200. Point C shows a price equals 3, quantity supplied is 300. Point D shows a price equals 4, quantity supplied is 400. And point E shows a price equals 5, quantity supplied is 500. Now, to draw a new supply curve, we simply have to trace the price of the good to the new quantity supplied. A price equals 1, A quantity supplied increased from 100 to 200. So this moves us from point A on our old supply curve to A prime on our new supply curve. A price equals to quantity supplied moved from the old quantity of 200 to 300. This moves us from point B at our old supply curve to point B prime at a new supply curve. At price equals 3, our old quantity supplied was 300, but the new quantity supplied is now 400. This moves us from point C on the old supply curve to point C prime on the new supply curve. When price increased to 4, the old supply was 400, but the new supply is now 500 apples. This moves us from point D on the old supply curve to point D prime on the new supply curve. When price increased to 5, the old quantity supply was 500, but the new quantity supplied is now 600, moving us from point E on the old supply curve to point E prime on the new supply curve. So tracing each point on the old supply curve gives us the old supply, and the new point on the new supply curve also gives us the new supply. So this is what we mean by a shift in the supply curve versus movement along the supply curve. Now, the factors that shift the supply curve, we've discussed this in detail in our previous lesson. But just a recap, the factors include the supplier's expectations, input prices, technology, a number of suppliers. So any change in any of these factors can shift the supply curve to the left or to the right. But the only thing that causes a movement along the supply curve is changes in the price of the good that is being sold. This is all we have for our lesson on shift in the supply curve versus movement along the supply curve. Our next lesson will be on equilibrium, where we combine both our demand curve and the supply curve to get our equilibrium price and quantity. If you enjoyed today's lesson, consider subscribing. Thank you.